Hello, thanks for joining us for our second lesson in our short holiday series entitled Immanuel, God with Us. Today we're going to talk about the topic of humility. One of the greatest lessons that we learn from the Nativity story is that we serve a truly humble King. Think about it for a moment. All the ways that God could have chosen to come to earth, and He chose the way He did. He could have been born in a royal palace. He could have been born to wealthy or particularly politically influential people. He could have waited till indoor plumbing, electricity, the internet, smartphones. But instead of all of those other options, Jesus came as humbly as He could. He was born the son of a poor family from an uneducated northern part of Israel, out of wedlock. He was born in a barn, wrapped in swaddling clothes, and His first nap was in a manger. And He humbled Himself to becoming human. I think that's the most humbling thing He did. I mean, let's really think about that for a moment. The God of all creation, dwelling on His eternal throne, left the glory of heaven and all the power and might of being together in heaven with the Father, and left all of that to come to earth, to be clothed in flesh and experience weakness, hunger, sickness, and pain when He didn't have to. It's truly an amazing thing that I believe we oftentimes overlook. And then, of course, you have what happened to Him at the end of His life on earth. The anguish and strife, the humiliation, the beatings, the torture, and of course the painful death that He experienced. All of which He experienced feeling isolated and alone, feeling separated from His friends, and even feeling separated from God the Father in heaven. Whoa, okay. It's getting kind of sad here. And this is good news. Remember from our last lesson? Good news. Good news is good. And beyond Jesus facilitating our great rescue through His humility, there are some other amazing things that come about when we practice humility ourselves. But in order to practice humility ourselves, in order to bless ourselves and others, we actually need to understand what humility is. So, what is humility? Well, back to the drawing board. Let's look at the perfect blueprint of humility in the person of Jesus Christ. Open your Bibles to Philippians chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. There we see an amazing example that Jesus gave, and we receive a bit of insight and explanation as to what all Christ did and how we can apply that same humility in our lives as well. I'll read it in the NIV, but follow along in your own Bible. There Paul writes and says, "Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from His love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and in one of mind." Okay, let's pause here for a minute. There's a lot to unpack in this text. So Paul starts off this passage under the assumption that the people that's reading it are Christians. And that's a fair assumption because he's writing it to the Philippians and specifically the church that is Christians that are there in Philippi. So of course they're Christians. But he makes this really important point by saying, therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ. That's found in verse 1. As a Christian, we are united with Christ. And in that union, we ought to be encouraged to do the right kinds of things. What things specifically? Well, having the same love, being like-minded, and being of one spirit and mind. This all points to our unity with Christ and the concept of being united with others. It's here that we see the first blessing of practicing humility in our own lives. It improves our relationships and allows us to connect to others in deeper ways than if we weren't humble. Okay, let's keep reading in verse 3. "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others." Okay, let's pause here again. So we're united with each other, but in order to keep that unity, in order to keep that relationship going and deepening, there are some things that we're actually going to have to do to allow that to continue. What exactly? Well, Paul says it boils down to a few specific things. Looking at that passage that we just read, he says basically it comes down to not being selfish. Don't be vain. Value other people highly. And finally, look to what other people actually care about. And then he crowns those four ideas with the concept of be like Jesus. Ultimately, if you follow those four things, you're living out a life like Jesus would. Now, why are those four concepts so important? And specifically, so important for the idea of being humble. So let's break them down. First, don't be selfish. This one should be pretty obvious. If I'm practicing humility, I shouldn't feel it necessary to always be concerned with fulfilling my own desires and wants, or even my own needs before other people. What does this look like at Christmas, though? Well, I can tell you one thing to avoid. Growing up, I was one of 4 boys, and at Christmas time specifically, it could get a little bit competitive with my younger brother, Justin. He's just a year younger than me, and so one of the things I would do at Christmas is I'd run downstairs, I'd check what was in my stocking, and then I would start counting. And I would count how many presents were addressed to me and how many presents were addressed to my brother. And it didn't matter if I knew that the presents coming to me were more expensive. I actually cared about who got more presents. Let me just say, don't do that. That's selfish, and that's not practicing humility the way we ought to. But what else? Not being selfish could be displayed through trying to give gifts to others and not being concerned with what they give you in return. Or it could look like spending time with family even if you'd rather be doing something else. It could even look like sharing with what you have with people who don't have as much as you. There's a lot of selfishness displayed during the holidays. Don't be that type of person. Next up is don't be vain. This one seems pretty straightforward too, right? If I'm humble, I'm not overly concerned with myself or feel as if I'm more important than the people around me. What does this look like at Christmas time though? Well, it could look like not making yourself the star of what's going on around you. Whether it's parties, dinners, get-togethers, or even Christmas morning around the tree, everything isn't about you. Think about the other people around you. All right, next up is value other people highly. This is what will naturally start to happen if you put away selfishness and vanity. You start to look at other people as important. And when we care about others more highly, we treat them better and deepen our relationships with them in this act. What does this look like at Christmas? Well, I think it can be displayed in a lot of different ways. But really, it's an internal change in our hearts and minds that leads to our actions becoming more service-oriented. And finally, looking to what other people care about. You start to see how these things naturally build off of one another. You see, you'll begin to actually care about the things other people care about when you practice humility. And when it comes to expressing this at Christmas time, it'll greatly transform your experience and improve your relationships. Whether it's watching a Hallmark Christmas movie when you hate those cheesy things, listening to Christmas music when you'd rather listen to your favorite band, and maybe it's spending time with people like your great aunt who will pinch your cheeks even though you already have a driver's license, relationships will grow and deepen in amazing ways. Okay, let's jump back to the scripture that we were reading. Verse 5. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. Okay, pausing again here. We see something amazing that Jesus does. The holy, magnificent, omnipotent, omnipresent creator of the universe becomes a human being. I love the phrase in verse 6 that Paul uses to describe Christ's attitude. God did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. When it comes to humility, we have to look at whether or not we're doing something for our own good or for the good of those around us. If we're acting or holding on to something merely for our own benefit, we're not acting like Jesus. It's in this action that Jesus takes one of the most crucial roles that he'll ever take. The role of being a servant to others. And it's this attitude that Paul is saying that we should imitate ourselves. We're starting to see what's truly important. It's the same thing that Paul reminds the church in Ephesus before he leaves in Acts chapter 20 and verse 35 when he says, "In every way I've shown you that by laboring like this, it's necessary to help the weak and to keep in mind the words of the Lord Jesus, for he said, 'It is more blessed to give than to receive.'" Now, which of those two things are you more concerned with this holiday season? Let's finish up our Philippians passage, picking back up in verse 8. "And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue acknowledge that Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. It's here that we see the most important humility that Jesus practiced. It wasn't in what he gave up, right? The glory and power of heaven, but it's in what he did, becoming a servant, willing to do anything for the Father. The idea of following someone else's plan, taking on their will, and to say, I know what I want, but I'll do what you want, takes an awful lot of humility. And Jesus understood that this was his purpose in life. In Matthew, Mark, and John, those three Gospels include a specific declaration of Jesus' purpose. For the sake of time, I'll just read the passage in Mark. It's Mark 10, verse 45. There Jesus says, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." The great blessing that is Jesus Christ comes in the wrappings of humility, an attitude that we ought to mirror ourselves all year round. And before you start making excuses that I sometimes am tempted to make, let me cut you off at the pass. You may be thinking, okay, that's nice, Joshua. It's easy for Jesus to do. He was with God. He saw the Father. He knew the plan. He is God himself. Well, to that I would respond with a Bible verse. Hebrews 4, verses 14 through 16. There, the writer says, "Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast to the confession. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tested in every way as we are, yet without sin. Therefore, let us approach the throne of grace with boldness, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us at the proper time." Jesus understands our weaknesses, not just because he created us, but because he experienced them firsthand. Yet he did not sin, and instead paved the path for us to follow to the Father and live with him forever. So as we get closer to Christmas, let us be bold in our faith. Let us be humble in heart and spirit, and let us be more like Christ, serving and loving those around us. We can continue to focus on the gifts we receive and our personal enjoyment of the holiday season and everything from holiday parties and get-togethers and what we want to do with our own free time. And you may enjoy living through the holidays with those goals or attitudes in mind. However, if you imitate our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, lower yourself, humble yourself to serve and look towards others, you'll find your Christmas experience to be one of deeper value and fuller meaning. May your holidays be bright and may you have a Merry Christmas. But more importantly, may you practice humility and service this holiday season. God bless.